Steelers fans know that Diontae Johnson didn't score a single touchdown in 2022, but Mike Tomlin addressed this issue and talked about why that might be and how the Steelers can plan to change that in 2023, as well as wide receiver draft plans, as Omar Khan spoke on Wednesday. We're going to bring a lot down here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Joining us is Mark Kaboly of The Athletic. It's going to be a fun episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting platform, and you can also watch this show on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And joining us is a man who's been with the Steelers every single day, it seems like for the past 30 years, Mark Kaboly, back on the scene from The Athletic. Mark, how you doing?
Good. Chris, I see you got that fresh cut. Looking sharp.
Had to get my fade right. You know, it'd been a minute. I had to get my last haircut when I was in Dayton covering March Madness. Didn't go as well as I was. So I had to go back to get my man Mitch back here in Pittsburgh.
They don't have much barbers in Dayton, you're telling me?
No, not the same. But Mark, I wanted to dive in on something that you wrote for The Athletic on Tuesday or on Monday, excuse me, when Mike Tomlin was talking about Diontae Johnson, and he wasn't making any excuses for the Steelers' lack of scoring with Diontae Johnson, but he did talk about some of the factors that played into it and how they were playing and the offense they were calling. Did you get a sense that from the way that he was talking about that things are going to be changing with the offense to be more conducive for a playmaker like Diontae Johnson and the passing game to break open a bit more?
Yeah, I think we're all smart enough to realize the offense wasn't on the level it needed to be last year. You know, regardless of if you're going to blame it on Canada, you're going to blame it on a rookie quarterback or an offensive line was getting to know each other. I mean, we all know that there was a limited ability for Pickett to be able to make plays. And, you know, as well as I do, Diontae Johnson's pretty good at a couple things. The catch and run, but you better hit him on stride so he doesn't break stride. That's all catch and run guys. And he's pretty good at getting off the line of scrimmage and beating the guy off man coverage. And if you're not throwing the ball deep and you're not on time and you can't check at the line to the best matchup, it tends to hinder a guy, but who still had, 85 catches, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he gets in against the Jets. He gets in against Cleveland. All of a sudden, we're not saying, well, Diontae Johnson didn't have any touchdowns. He had a terrible season. Let's trade him. I think he's a big part of this future of this team. He has to have a good year this year. He has to be, he might have to change his game a little bit and not worrying about the quick throws a little bit. I like to see him run more routes down the field a little bit more. But you could tell Tomlin's over it too. After about the third question, he goes, man, that was like a year ago. I'm over it. I'm done with this. And that's probably what he wants Diontae to probably think too, who cares about last year? You had no touchdowns. Who cares? So let's move forward here. And it was just a bad situation from the holdout or the hold in to the contract, getting a ton of money, the expectations, working with Mitch for a month and a half. Now he's down in Florida working with Kenny Pickett all the time. The offense should be better. Kenny should have the offense open up to him more. So I would expect to have a lot better season from Diontae. It's just in terms of, putting points on the board. They have 12 touchdown passes last year.
I think so something like that.
Pickens had 4, and it's not like anybody caught touchdown passes. So, 0 is bad, but, when your team leader has 4, it's not much better.
Let's see here. Going over the numbers, Kenny Pickett threw 7 touchdowns, Mitch Trubisky threw 4, and Chase Claypool threw 1. So, yeah, that's 12 touchdown passes.
I forgot about the Claypool one.
But point being, I'm right with you here, because there's a lot of Steelers fans who are very down on Diontae Johnson because he wasn't a playmaker. But not just this year, but think back to how he came into this team. 2019, he was supposed to be, he was going to be the rookie X factor guy that was going to open things up now that Antonio Brown was gone, and then Ben Roethlisberger's hurt. And then Ben Roethlisberger comes back in 2020. They have some clicks, he had some really impressive plays that year, but it still wasn't prime Ben Roethlisberger. And then, of course, 2021, most limited version of Ben Roethlisberger. And then 2022, he has a rookie quarterback. So Diontae Johnson, when the Steelers were drafting him, thought they were going to have at least 2, maybe 3 more years of Ben Roethlisberger playing like he did in 2017, 2018, throwing the ball more, getting the ball downfield. And then he didn't get a chance to have that. And now, there's this talk about, let him go, trade him away. I'm with you, though. The guy still gets great separation. Is he elite? No, not right now. But I think that if he's allowed to kind of mature with a quarterback that's younger and coming up and getting better, that'll give him a chance to kind of find chemistry with someone, which it was really tough for him to find chemistry with any of the Steelers quarterbacks that he played with. I mean, again, Ben Roethlisberger, he had 2 years, but you covered Ben Roethlisberger his entire career. That's not the Ben Roethlisberger that everyone came to know over his time with the Steelers.
Yeah. I mean, he's put in a bad situation, and I don't think it helps that he got paid $18 million in the fans' eyes. They think that he should be producing like, the top receivers in the league. Yeah. And one thing about Diontae is this. There's very few people work harder than that guy. You hear the complaints about, him dropping the ball. You never see a guy work more on his hands than I've ever seen with tennis balls, this, that, or another. He's the last one off the field. It's not like he's not trying. He's putting the work in. It's just it just hasn't come fully together yet. And you need him to be able to, be a partner with the George Pickens. I mean, you can't have one without the other. It'd be nice to see more Freiermuth getting in the middle of the field. And if they add anybody else, if Calvin Austin turns into what they want him to turn into, that opens up a whole different ball game as well. But at this point right now, we sit here and we just don't know. I mean, like I said, it's crazy to think that Diontae Johnson should be traded, got rid of, cut, whatever. I think he's a top receiver. He's a top 20 receiver that, could have found the end zone 4 times, really, because he did have 2 2-point conversions. So it was just a bad offensive year. What they averaged, 14 points a game. 2 touchdowns a game, something ridiculous like that. Nobody's scoring for him. So how do you expect to single out this one guy and think that he's going to score for him?
Yeah, and one thing I'll point out, you're absolutely right. It's nothing new that Diontae Johnson did make it a point to show up early, stay late in the work. And they averaged 18.1 points per game. I believe that was 32nd, 31st, 30th, 29, 28, 27, 26th as far as the rating of points per game there. But again, they were a different offense, and Mike Tomlin talked about how they want to be different this year. One thing that can be different is how they throw the ball and how they use their weapons. I want to talk to you in a second here about what they might do in the NFL draft to add to their weapons, because we've done a lot of talk about cornerbacks, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, all these other positions. But Kenny Pickett, would it make sense to add to his receiver group to give him another target to throw to? We'll talk about that in a second here with Mark Kaboly. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And as the NCAA tournament has hit the Final Four, there's no better place to place your bets on that or NBA than America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers the no sweat first bet, which gives you up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win when you sign up for FanDuel. And you can sign up for that by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And you sign up today, claim your no sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. All in all, an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter here with Mark Kaboly of The Athletic. Mark, the Steelers, like I was saying before, the Steelers have a lot of different needs, but wide receiver has been something they haven't been afraid to add to. What is the sense that you get of the Steelers going for a wide receiver in this draft? Do they go for just an overall best playmaker they can find at wide receiver, a specific type of wide receiver? And if they did, where in the draft do you think they make that move?
I don't think 17 is a possibility.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't think the value's there with – I mean, if you want Addison, I don't think he's there. Flowers from Boston College, I think that's a later. I think you can – if they end up falling to 32, which is iffy, that's where you snag those guys. And Steelers have the history of second-day wide receivers, and it's a deep class. So I would address that more in the second day, that 32 pick or that – what is that, 49
and 32, yep.
I would address it there. I don't know if you specifically go after a slot receiver. Omar Khan said Tuesday that they're in the market for an upgrade at the position because it's not more of an upgrade. Is the guys they have at that position right now are just unknown. You don't know what Austin can do. He could be good. Right. He might not be. Gunnar Olszewski, if it's the training camp Gunnar Olszewski, sign me up. If it's the regular season Gunnar Olszewski, no thanks. Cody White, if he's the practice squad guy, he always looks good to me in a practice squad. Okay, if they bring in Miles Boykin or somebody like that. But Omar said something interesting that they need to, when they look at the slot receiver, they have to find somebody that fits their style of what they're looking for. Now, he didn't expand on what type of slot receiver are they looking for. Are they looking for the speedy jet sweep guy like Calvin Austin or some of the bigger guys like, Juju of a couple of years ago? But I think it's quite obvious they have to address that position because, you're looking at Diontae is in what? Next year will be his last year. George Pickens, of course, is great, and he has 3 years left on his contract. So you have to keep adding to that room. I just don't think it's going to be the first round. I mean, it's the 1 year that the receivers are just not jumping off at you. Probably in the last 8 to 10 years, you used to get 6, 7 receivers. Now it's just not there anymore. But they'll definitely add to it. I think they'll look somewhere else in the first round, depending on how that draft, how the board breaks. That's huge. That's going to be, more than anything else. I think they'll make the right pick. Mm-hmm. But how the board how it comes out, how it breaks is going to determine what they get.
Absolutely, and that's always the case. You got to watch what teams are doing in front of you. But another thing I think it's going to be interesting to watch. If let's say the top 3 offensive tackles come off the board, the top 3 cornerbacks come off the board, and maybe you're sitting there. You're fine. Maybe you're sitting there and you're saying like, man, like, I don't have a 17th overall pick value at offensive tackle in this. How likely do you think it is that they trade back to get more picks, especially day 2 picks, where some of these wide receivers and some of these other players at other positions could be really solid in their value?
I was trying to hammer Omar on this just a little bit ago. And I asked him, what do you value? The guy you want, the guy you like to move up, or would you value those 7 picks? And he's like, it depends. Talk to me April 27th. It looks like they're pretty much open to anything. But if I'm reading way in between the lines here, unless there's somebody that they really, really value high, maybe a couple picks in front of them, maybe the 14, maybe the 13. Maybe if they get a feeling that the Patriots are going to take Joey Porter and they want him, maybe they'll move up there. But I think they really value these 7 picks in a very deep draft, Omar called it. So unless there's a star there, unless there's Parrish Johnson sitting there, right? Unless there's I don't even know if they would move up to get Skronsky. I don't know. If there's one of those tackles there, if there's
Broderick Jones.
Yes, as the corners, if Gonzalez is there. I'm not quite sure about Witherspoon. I'm not sure if they like him or not. If Porter's there, I think maybe within reasonable they would move up to get him, but they just might make it, come back to him. You always have to – the perfect situation is if all the guys are gone, you move back to 24, pick up a pick, and get the guy you want anyways. But, that's fantasy world sometimes. You have to have 2 to play that game as well. So it's going to be interesting because we know what Kevin and Tomlin and Art used to like to do. And now you're throwing new names into the board.
Right.
The Whitles, the Sheldon Whites, the Mark Sadowskis, Omar Khans, and you're thinking, okay, how do they view this? So I'm sure a lot of it's going to be the same of their overall philosophy. So let's put it this way, Chris. Last time they moved up, didn't quite work out.
Yeah, that was Devin Bush they moved up for and looked good for a year and a half. Then he got hurt, and then now he's about to play for the Seahawks to see if he can resurrect his NFL career. I agree on that point. I want to get back to something that you said a little bit earlier, Mark. You talked about a style, getting a receiver that fits their style in this draft class. What is the style that they should be looking for? Should they be looking for another burner? Should they be looking for a separation guy, a jump ball guy? Because it seems like you got a separator in Diontae Johnson. You got a guy who was contested back catches in George Pickens. And Johnson can also win a couple contested catches. The one against the Bengals was a key play that he made this to keep to one of their bigger wins this season. You have Calvin Austin, who is a burner on tape and in college, but we haven't seen him play yet in the NFL. What is the style that you think best suits what the Steelers read right now to go along with Kenny Pickett, this offensive line that they're still kind of shifting around and making, Pat Freiermuth, and the skills of this offense?
Well, let's just break it down here. What did they upgrade? They upgraded their guards, right?
Yes.
They brought in Gentry, a blocking tight end, brought him back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tomlin says, you know what, we'll always be a power smash running first team. So it sounds like to me they want to run the ball, right?
Right.
They want to go back to 1989 or whatever it was, 97, and run the ball. And I think the perfect slot receiver is up in New England right now. Juju, one of those big guys in the slot, can knock a guy's head off, open up some more space for Najee. So I think that would be a perfect guy, but I don't know if there's too many people like him, in the draft or in the league whatsoever, of a guy that's just going to block the heck out of you, knock your head off, can make a play here and there. Maybe a Miles Boykin's a type of guy, but I have never seen him play as much to be able to view him as a guy is going to be enjoying the blocking. I think they need a physical. And do you know who I really like?
Who do you like?
And this could be it too. I don't know. I'm just throwing straws here. How about Connor Hayward in that position?
Oh, so you're saying flex him into –
He's a tweener, right?
Yeah.
He's not that big to be a tight end. He's very, very talented catching the ball. He has great body control. Put him in that spot where, he has a bad matchup. I don't know. Maybe that's an opportunity to get him on the field more as well, because he's not an end-of-the-line tight end. I mean, he's just not big enough, but he's maybe a little bit too big to be a slot receiver. If you could turn Connor Hayward into what Juju Smith-Schuster, that would be the ultimate for me. But I don't – once again, this is pure, Nintendo football for me, man. Whatever, Madden football, right?
This is a Madden move right here that you talking about, saying, "Oh yeah, just switch his position, make him a little bit taller, and then we can make him the slot wide receiver. He'll be a 99 overall." And that's it.
What is he? A tight end? What was he in college? Tight end, H-back, running back.
He was a tight end for Michigan State, but he's definitely an H-back in the NFL.
Yeah, we played a couple years running back too, so he has that talent. He didn't really have a lot of stats last year, but he put up. He made big catches in big situations. So if all things fell, I'm not saying that's plan A, but I wouldn't mind to seeing that plan C.
I think that would be a fun added on piece, like how they used him on the jet sweep towards the end of the year. Yes. I think that was the Raiders game where they used him to run the clock out. With that play, those type of things are inventive. And then if you're moving him around in those formations, that would be a fun thing to use. He wouldn't necessarily be a slot wide receiver, quote unquote, but he would be a utility piece that you could kind of move across, and people would have to be aware, like, that guy can catch the ball, and he has very good hands. Like, that's one thing. Like, when I covered him when Michigan State beat Pitt in the Peach Bowl just the year before, and he made one of the most spectacular catches of the bowl season in the end zone to give Michigan State a big lead in that game, and that was an impressive play. And he's done that quite a few times in his college career. He made a couple plays as a Steeler last year.
Was that the game Pitt would have won by 4 touchdowns if Pickett played?
Probably, yes, it would have been.
Narduzzi,
don't let Prezuda hear you say that, sir.
I thought that's what Narduzzi said, didn't he? Everybody?
Oh yeah, Narduzzi did say that. But point being, I think it's there. I would be interested to see if the Steelers were to get another wide receiver this year. I agree with you. I wouldn't go in the first round like Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think it'd be nice to have a guy like that. I just don't think he falls to them. And if he does fall to 17, I think that they have other needs that would be more pressing. But I think that there's guys that you can get. I've talked a lot about Jaden Reed, a Michigan State guy himself, who would be, a smaller slot option who can get really good separation, catch some balls in traffic. But then there's other guys out there that I'd be really intrigued by. Parker Washington of Penn State. And this may not be a slot guy, but Cedric Tillman, a big 6'3", 213 pound guy.
17?
Not at 17. No, I'm talking about like even third round. Like if I'm the Steelers, like I'm comfortable making first and both the second round picks either trenches or playmaker on defense, because they need to get younger on defense. They need to get some guys that don't cost you as much over the next few years. And I think that there's some really good pieces at linebacker, cornerback, and defensive line who could all be great fits on day 2. But if you're looking in that third round, even the fourth round, there could be some interesting wide receiver prospects there where they could hit on. And you know what? If Calvin Austin comes through next year, then maybe that third or fourth round pick just doesn't play as much. They're the fourth option on your team, and you're not, you don't feel like you're burning a hole in your pocket there because you spent this draft pick on a player who's not getting as much playing time, especially in an offense that, as Mike Tomlin says, they want to run the ball a lot. So a fourth receiver isn't going to be worth as much this year. But if you were to get a guy like that in those middle rounds and he works out, great. If not, he's coming up. You have 3 more years with him, and then you get to see what you want to do another 2 years. Because like you said, 2024 is Diontae Johnson's last official season under contract. And then you can start asking these questions. Who's going to be the guy with Kenny Pickett moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're really going to give Calvin Austin every chance to win this job, because not only is he, 4.2.5 speed, 4.3, but what was he known for coming out of school? Being tough.
Yeah,
not having alligator arms, taking that hit and bouncing.
He took hits.
So I think you have to give him the first opportunity there, especially he looked good in preseason. Not preseason, early in camp, but that doesn't mean quite much. I think they will give him the first opportunity, but you need to add talent at wide receiver. I mean, you need to add talent pretty much everywhere. You need to add talent at tackle, because guess what? If Chooks go down, who's going in?
Right, I agree, because now they got LaRaven Clark added in there.
Exactly.
Yes, so you want to be prepared there. I agree entirely there. I'll also say, before they even put pads on this year, Calvin Austin got clocked by Diontae KZ. If you remember that hit, it was like right over the middle of the field, and like he got up, he was fine, but it was like okay, I guess we're doing that before the pads even get on. But like you said, he's a tough guy. But he also just said they have other needs. I want to get to some of those other needs. We have reports now that the Steelers are getting some top 30 draft pre-visits from cornerbacks. We'll talk about those 2 cornerbacks that are on the list now, and I want to get Mark's thoughts on some of the cornerbacks that they could actually be looking at, where they could actually take one. All that continued here right on the Locked On Steelers podcast. And we'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Mark Caboli from The Athletic. Mark, the Steelers, the reports are now in that the Steelers are taking top 30 visits from Emmanuel Forbes, slot corner, smaller guy, and Tyrique Stevenson, a bigger corner from Miami. Emmanuel Forbes, of course, coming in here. He would fit more of like the slot option that could be a really good playmaker on the football. I think that would be an interesting option there, considering the guys that they do have in there. He's a SEC guy, Mississippi State, and he could play outside if he wanted to, but I think that like with his lightweight, and the guy weighs 166 pounds at the combine, that's pretty light for a corner. You probably want that guy in, playing in the slot. But Tyrique Stevenson, a little bit different, 6 foot, 198. Both run very well. Forbes ran a 4.35. Stevenson ran a 4.45. Both are more than acceptable as far as speeds that you want for corners. What is the top priority at cornerback for the Steelers right now? Do they just want a guy who can attack the football and play either outside or in the slot, specifically slot, or do they need a guy who's like, no, you're the future outside guy, learn behind Peterson and Witherspoon and Wallace, because someone needs to take up that mantle soon?
Yeah, I think that would be the ultimate plan, right? First of all, they need a guy that make the plays on the ball. I mean, they were very, very happy with how many picks they had last year, what they did tie for league lead in interceptions.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why KZ got $6 million and Terrell Edmonds left, because KZ can make plays on the ball, Minka can make plays on the ball, and they really, really value. I mean, Peterson had 5 picks last year. Levi Wallace had, 14, 15 pass breakups. That's what they like to see. So, I mean, at some point you have to invest a high pick in a cornerback. I mean, even Cam Sutton was a 3rd-round pick, and it took him 6 years to be, pretty decent. So if it was up to me, I would think Joey Porter Jr., if he's there, that's who they would go with, and just say Patrick Peterson. And if you saw him in his introductory press conference, seems like a good dude, man. It seems like he would be more than willing to help anybody out and show him the ropes and teach him how to be a pro. And that's half of the benefit of signing him right now, is to bring him in. He could play obviously multiple positions, but he can help some of these younger guys because, they don't have any cornerbacks. Next year, they said Pierre a 1-year deal. Peterson's basically a 1-year deal. Wallace's deal is up next year. Next year, this time, we could be looking and saying, they don't have one cornerback under contract. I mean, Witherspoon, too, I think only has 1 left, right? I don't think they have anybody else under contract. So I think they need to really look at the cornerback position. And once again, is that 17 or is that 32? It depends how it falls. I mean, you could find yourself in a situation, no Mark Hart's first draft. You're looking for a tackle and you're looking for a cornerback, and they're all gone by 17. Now what do you do? I mean, you're not taking an edge guy. I don't take an edge guy. I'm not paying tons of money to a guy that's going to be number 3. I guess safety, but I hate safeties in a pick at that high. Some people are saying tight end. I don't like that pick either. All of a sudden, you find yourself in a bad situation saying, my goodness, am I going to have to reach, or am I going to have to just take, a center, an interior lineman that we just had, we just spent some money on? So this draft can go south in a hurry. Not south, but it can give him some curveballs quite quickly if it doesn't fall, break where they are. Because, I mean, sure, you like to have Campbell or Trenton Simpson, but I don't know if I'm taking them 17 overall. They're in no man's land. I view 17 as no man's land.
Interesting. No man's
land. They get there and they're like, oh, geez, we got some good players, but nobody's 17th worthy in our eyes. That's the way I look at it.
No, that could totally happen. But again, this is what I've been talking about trading back for a while now. I just think that you're absolutely right. That could be the place where, no one that you think is worth 17 overall falls to you, and like maybe there's some other people, like maybe Bijan Robinson's there and there's someone that really wants the best running back on the board. Maybe someone's like, oh, this is the this quarterback's still available, we need to go get him. Maybe something like that. But if you're the Steelers, I think they need to be open to it. Also, you remember Omar Khan saying before, I think it was at the combine, when he was like, if he's sitting there on 30 with the 32nd overall pick and his phone's is ringing a bunch, he's going to entertain some of those calls as well, so that the Steelers could be in a position where, maybe they can get more draft picks by moving back in the first round, or even moving back with the first pick of the 2nd round to try to get in a better position to take some of those guys. And I agree with you. This could turn into a no man's land. I think it would be interesting. I think one thing that's kind of played out is the whole cornerback narrative. Of course, Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, they're expected to not fall to the Steelers. But the idea of a Joey Porter Jr. falling there versus a Deonte Banks out of Maryland, who tested really well and was extremely fast. He ran a 4.35. Joey Porter Jr., a guy who, with obvious ties to the Steelers, everyone's been talking about him since before he even started playing his last year at Penn State this past season as a possibility. Does his skill set match with what you think the Steelers need? Because he wasn't a turnover guy at Penn State. He was definitely athletic. He was definitely talented, but he didn't post those kind of turnover numbers. And like you were saying earlier, they're prizing guys who can attack the football.
Yeah, but historically, what they like in the corners is big physical press man guy. And I think it's Joey Porter pretty much to a T, right? And the guy is just a good kid too. I mean, you read up any of his background, and I mean, he does everything right. And I talked to Tomlin last year right after the draft and just mentioned on the field on OTAs about Porter. Joey Porter, and he just raved about him. This is a kid I was at Latrobe High School when it rained one day in training camp 5 years ago, running routes with Antonio Brown or whatever. So they're well aware of him and what he's able to do. It's just whether – and that's what makes this draft difficult with the new regime too, is we historically know what they like, but I don't know how much that changes now with the new front office guys. Okay, they like to have press man, physical corners, but maybe not anymore. Maybe they're going to incorporate more zone if Peterson's in there. Maybe they're not looking for that. We don't know that quite yet. That's what makes this draft day we're going to go into it. And if anything happens, you ever watch the movie Seven? When they open up the box, he goes, I forget what Morgan Freeman said. If an alien popped out, I don't want you to be surprised or whatever. It's basically no matter what happens in that draft, you probably shouldn't be surprised.
I feel you on that. And you have now taken the place of Josh Taylor, who always makes the movie references on this show. He usually comes in and drops movie lines.
But I screwed it up though, because I can't remember what the Morgan Freeman quote was. It was classic though.
I got you. Well, if it's so classic, you should know it by heart. This is a point deducted from Mark Camboli here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.
I thought he said something maybe of Jesus Christ himself. I don't know. I'm going to have to go Google this afterwards now.
You're going to have to Google it, and you have to better correct it. But, Mark, we appreciate your perspective on things as you're sitting there in Arizona in owners' meetings. You've been talking to Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and everybody there. Thanks again for joining us here. Mark, let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work at The Athletic.
All right, brother. I just got a message on my phone that says I have to check into my Southwest flight airline. And the last thing I want is a C boarding pass.
Well, you go and do that, sir. We won't hold you here any longer. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find this show on all your favorite podcasting platforms. You can also watch this show on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily episodes. We're back tomorrow with Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio talking all things Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.